Thank you. Thank you. So this session is going to be different. And the biggest difference is that there are no slides. Yeah. So there are no slides. And I think the best way of having any workshop is to have someone speak who has actually touched that topic really close. So I'm not going to speak much on this. So you have already understood the context, right? I don't know how many of you have attended the keynote session that I had, where there were some points regarding how people are finding it a bit challenging in extracting the complete value of data using Hadoop. Okay, so there was a speech which was given by the head of analytics of Facebook in one of the sessions. And he said when he goes and talks to any of his colleagues in any other companies, and when he asks the questions, what is your big data strategy? They say Hadoop. Okay, then he says, I'm going to break 4 myths about big data or analytics. And the first myth that he went on and broke it was big data equal to Hadoop. Okay, he said big data means getting value out of the data. Hadoop is a technology. It's a means to get that. If you're able to get that, well and good. If you're not, then you have to think something more of that. I don't know how many of you are aware that there is a company in Bangalore which is bigger than Facebook in terms of number of lines contributed to Apache Hadoop. Can you guess which that company is? That company, last month, in one of the articles in Economic Times, it came out, that article said that that company can be the most innovative company coming out of India. Most innovative. And when we say that's a big word that is being used, because we have got many contenders for that. You got it. That is InMobi. Okay? InMobi is the 5th biggest contributor to Apache Hadoop in the world after Cloudera, Hortonworks, IBM, Yahoo, InMobi. They have got petabytes of data with them. Okay? I'm extremely lucky, okay, and we all of us collectively are very fortunate that we have one gentleman, Mr. Rohit Chatter, from InMobi, who will enter into a conversation with me, okay, about what does the data mean for him and what is it that he is trying to do. So let me welcome Rohit Chatter. So we'll get into a conversation now. Okay. So welcome, Rohit.
Thank you.
Okay. So Rohit, thanks for coming. Okay. So you are not able to see him, right? Yeah. Okay. So Rohit, as I've committed to the audience out here, I don't want to. I don't want to speak much, because what I'll be talking will be something like an equivalent of slide sets. I want you to talk more, and I want you to talk to regarding the real usage of what it is. So before getting that into Rohit, tell me something about yourself. I mean, what I've read about you from your LinkedIn profile and all that, it looks to be damn impressive. Damn impressive. Like he has worked in Yahoo, and he has created clusters of petabytes in his earlier. So can you just tell me a brief about what you have done in your earlier roles, Rohit?
So I spent almost 20 years in the industry of data. I used to be an Oracle DBA to begin with, and I think in my age, in those days, Oracle was like very popular. So almost everybody used to get into Oracle because that used to fetch most money, and you can travel to US very quickly. And then as I continued in my experience, this Hadoop thing started, and I was in Yahoo for almost like 7.5 years. Until they decided that they'll shrink Yahoo in India and then move to US. But Yahoo was probably one of the most amazing places, and especially for the techie guys. We did some amazing stuff using Hadoop, and we actually contributed quite a bit to Hadoop. Hadoop was probably we created the next level of Hadoop being in Yahoo, right? And we started a lot of analytics in Yahoo. I think 2008, 2009, I used to go to the conferences and present, how do you do star schema on grid? I don't know how many of you actually come from a database or a star modeling, snowflake modeling, right? Have you ever heard in 2008, 2009 doing star modeling on grid? No, right? Everybody used to say, oh, if you Hadoop, then you need to know Pig. Pig was not that live, so people used to write Java and stuff. So from that time, we enabled the star modeling on grid, where we used to generate the Pig script automatically based on the relationship. And from there, we actually ended up creating a platform where, how many of you actually really use Hadoop? Very, very few, okay. So people who use Hadoop, they know that once they run a, say, Hive query or Pig, it submits a job, runs it, look at the log, the data will come, and then you will see. Do you think any of the business users who really use the data will wait for this? They hardly wait, right? And that's where we created a next level of analytics, including a combination of like in-memory analytics using Impala, right? Cloudera Impala. Now this Stinger is going to come through Hortonworks. Then we use HBase, creating cubes in HBase, and then finally using Hive at the back end, and then our own custom formats. So that's how we actually evolved Hadoop all the while. And then a year later I joined InMobi, and that's where again we have a big Hadoop workshop. And most of you know InMobi has now totally spun off in a different form. Instead of an ad network, now they are more about user and discovering what user like, and kind of reach out to them when they want what they want, enable commerce, enable discovering of app. So it's more around, I don't know, how many of you heard of MIP? Yeah. We did a huge launch in India also. Yeah, China and US. And it is all about user. So making user a center place, not just for ad, because ad is one thing. And 90% of the people don't even, they're blind to ad. How many of you really see when the app banner ad shows up? Most of the people don't even see it. It doesn't exist, right? So why show them if they don't like it, right? So enable, learn about the user. We get close to more than 1 billion users a month. That means there's a huge opportunity in making sure that you show them what they really need, and finally have them get things done. So
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so so that shows the kind of experience that Rohit brings with him. I mean, he spent 7.5 years in Yahoo when Hadoop was actually taking some shape, right? We are in a stage where we are seeing Hadoop in a pretty matured state, but he actually saw Hadoop reach to a certain level while he was actively working in Yahoo. So Rohit, I understand that you have got quite a huge amount of data in InMobi. So what is all this data? Where is it coming from?
It's all user interaction. The moment you open an app, and if the app is integrated with either InMobi or any other ad network, it makes a request on the back end. Right from that moment onwards, the data flows in. Make an ad request, get an ad, see an ad, click an ad, interact with an ad, everything. So all this data, imagine 1 billion users. If a user comes at least 100 times a day, and definitely people use mobile very often, right? In an hour, people open app like 5 times, different apps, right? Imagine 1 billion doing that 100 times a day can really become 100 billion events, and then internal events and stuff. So it really becomes pretty large. Now, making sense out of that data, right, becomes a lot of noise also, right? Not necessarily given that Android, for example, people play around with Android, fake it. So you may not get the clean data, right? Many times kids playing it, maybe that's not the right user to target for something that you might be selling or something like that, right? So finding the right user set, knowing what they really want, and then reaching them at the right time when they really care about. I mean, there was an example that a guy was, here itself, right? So the guy was stuck in some of the traffic, and he got an ad saying that Ola cab, and he just probably parked in one of the mall, and he just took an Ola cab and went. So if you can really figure out that there is a traffic condition, the guy is coming from there, and maybe he's in need of one of those things, or something else is happening.
So that was done using InMobi?
Yeah. So one of those.
Okay.
So those are the things that you have to do with. Now imagine 1 billion people finding that right moment for that right ad, so that it really helps that person. It's not an easy task.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it has to be quantified, which is it is in excess of quite an excess of petabyte, that kind of data. And I don't think there will be many companies with 1 billion customers, and that is what they can claim actually. They have that kind of customers in realistically speaking. Okay, so with this kind of a data volume, Rohit, it must have been really challenging for you to manage this data and all, and that is probably why you went with Hadoop in such a big manner, right?
Yeah.
So just walk us through your journey of how InMobi started the Hadoop thing, what they started doing with Hadoop, all those things.
So InMobi, by the time I joined, they already had a decent presence of Hadoop. So I didn't really, get a chance to do that. But in Yahoo days where Hadoop was coming up, we actually lived through this big 0.6, I don't even remember now, 0.6 and stuff. At that time, the clusters used to fail a lot. The disk may not be accessible sometimes. The node is gone out. The network was not that great. And as the data grew, the machines became more powerful. I think the Hadoop started saying that you can now use commodity hardware.
Yeah.
Right? But I think now we use the most high-end hardware for Hadoop, right? So that's the irony. But the point is that we set up like a 4,000 node cluster, I think in 2009, 2010. And obviously with that size, you can imagine the kind of complexity with the network, the topology that it has to go through, the amount of hardware that you need to make sure it's optimized. The disk we didn't use the very high-end disk because that's the whole Hadoop point, right? And then node failure, making sure the data is always accessible. We made it as a research cluster later.
Okay.
So it's not an easy feat to begin with, but I think these days there are a lot of companies that just help you to just get started in a week or so.
Okay. So yeah, before I move on, any questions till this point to Rohit, if you want to put across?
Yeah, so I work as a principal architect at InMobi, and I'm hands-on on Hadoop and any of the big data analytics. Any questions you have? I've gone through RDBMS to NoSQL, left to right. So.
Yeah.
My question is about Yahoo. You mentioned that you started from using commodity servers and you went on to use high-end servers. Why high-end servers?
The need became so very difficult to have people. So it was a big word, right? Hadoop will solve everything. But Hadoop doesn't solve the concurrency. If there are too many people running the same request, obviously it's not going to come fast, right? It was supposed to be that. So all the RDBMS used to be, very expensive in those days, right? So people wanted to process large data, and that large data never fit. So they made it as, back-end job that will run and come back. For that, you don't need to invest too much, right? But as it picked up, the new features came in. It actually, from the back end, it actually started to front end, where users directly interacted with the Hadoop, right? Even the business users, they had some interface and they'll run some query. Once the Hive became popular, people started running Hive queries. So as it moved forward, obviously you cannot continue to use the whole hardware because that hardware will take a lot of time. So you need to have a right hardware for that concurrency that you are going to enable it. So that's why, you need to have.
So I know you worked with Hadoop for a very long time, but really is there any product that comes close to the functionality of Hadoop? Is there really any other product at all in the market that?
So Hadoop has its own, I would say, problem solving area. Hadoop is not like answer to anything. You have data and you have Hadoop, it will be solved? No. I think that would be a wrong thing to say. Based on the use cases, and we being at InMobi, we still use Hadoop, but that doesn't mean that we don't use MySQL, Postgres, we're going to use Vertica now. So that doesn't mean that you will not need any of those things. But it has its own special thing that it does, right? When there is a large data you want to process in a distributed manner, then yes, it comes really handy and helps you. But you cannot say that, okay, you have Hadoop, then everything else is solved. Actually, the problem starts from there then.
Yeah, in fact, that is the kind of information or perception that I was also personally having. So when Rohit called me up in February, okay, that Vivek, we want to engage with you, we want to have a discussion on some Vertica. I don't know how many of you have heard about Vertica. Okay, I was, to be very honest, Rohit, I haven't told you, but I was skeptical. Okay, because they being such a big Hadoop player, will they actually go for something like a Vertica? Okay, and I asked him this question point blank. Rohit, why are you looking at us? Okay, so Rohit, probably you may like to share why you actually started looking at something like a Vertica.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we have a large cluster, Hadoop cluster. We have built our in-house tool where you drag drop and it will automatically runs on the background and comes back with the report. All the large reports that we generate actually still goes there and will continue to go there because we can't pay too much of licensing fees, right? But I'm just kidding. The point is that business users don't want to wait, right? You have flighted a campaign and an ad group or some targeting thing. You cannot wait for a job to finish. You want a real good way to query your data and see whether this particular campaign that you flighted is really going to use or is of the right use, the right targeting options based on the performance that is happening on the background, right? Now, for those, you will not wait for a Hadoop to run that job, come back and give it back to you. Many times if there are large jobs running, Hadoop will just wait because it gets into this task manager and it will get queued, and once that slots are available, those map slots are available, it will execute and run, right? So you'll have to have the right combination, look at the use cases that you want to answer with the tool or technology that you have. So Hadoop solves that part of the problem where large processing data pipeline processes, very good. Interactive queries, quick analysis, I hardly feel that anybody will be using it actually in the industry.
Yeah.
If you do HBase, people say they use HBase or Cassandra, ask them if they have to change a column, add a new column and do a new level of analytics where it is not indexed on. So there is a key, right? If the key is not there, then lookup doesn't work. And the lookup doesn't work, the range scan just kills the system, right? So, it still has its place, is all I will say.
Yeah, definitely. It has its place, and that is why in the earlier keynote session I had said that you need different knives for different scenarios.
Correct.
Okay, a scalpel can't be used for cutting vegetables, and a kitchen knife can't be used for conducting medical surgery. So different data and different needs have to be treated separately, and this is what exactly Rohit also mentioned. Hadoop is good, no doubt about that, but that there are certain scenarios which Rohit explained, which where they needed some complementary stuff on top of Hadoop. Rohit, I mean, you are so big in terms of analytics. Data plays such an important role for you as an organization. So what are the kind of resources that you have? Because we keep on hearing that resource is tough to retain, if not get it.
Yeah, so Bangalore is probably the biggest Hadoop place. If you have too big a Hadoop shop, then you need too big of people either to be trained because you won't get. So if you see these days colleges and stuff, they also. So unless you have a really good challenging business problem thrown at engineers, you just can't keep them saying that, oh, you continue to write this Java program or write this high queries and stuff like that, because that doesn't entice them anymore, right? Those days are gone when people used to say, I want to learn Hadoop. I mean, that's what. If you see 2008 to 2012, I think that was the era where knowing Hadoop was itself, knowing PickScript was itself like a big deal, right? And then I think 12 onwards to 14 onwards, it fizzled out a little bit. Now it is more about how do we enable Hadoop for any business enablement. I think that is where having the resources and having them engaged at that level, where using technology to solve a teething problem of business is, I think, is one of the difficult challenges. And then having a resource finding a resource in Bangalore, I don't know how many of you are really looking to hire, but it's a nightmare. So.
Yeah, and especially as in one of the sessions said, with so much of VC funding going around, it's always difficult. So there will always be someone who is ready to pay someone higher.
Yeah, it's hop, right?
Yeah, it's
4 companies hopping happening, right? Ola, Flipkart, Snapdeal, InMobi.
Absolutely. Okay. So Rohit, what you mentioned is One is different scenarios needs different tools in the earlier part. And the second was actually retaining or getting and retaining the right kind of resources. How about Hive? Because I understand that Hive, you also started having some challenges on the Hive as well, on some issue. Because I recall that Facebook completely dumped away Hive, though Hive came out of their shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Hive still uses MapReduce, right? I don't know how many of you use Hive. Again, yeah. So it still uses MapReduce. It still schedules a job. It's just abstracted further up for people. So Hive was actually a very good thing that happened to Hadoop is because business community can really access this Hadoop
Using Hive.
elephant,
SQL
yeah.
queries,
Because otherwise it was a dreaded thing. They need some special geeky guy. They used to think they'll hire, and if they tell him something he wouldn't understand, he just understands programming.
And ultimately he will become a data holder.
Correct.
Yeah.
So Hive really bridged that gap. But I think Hive on Spark is going to be a next good thing that can help. But again, it will take its own time. I don't know how many of you use SparkQL, right? So using RDDs and stuff. Have you faced concurrency issues? Oh, okay. Scala and yeah. So Hive, I think for a longest time, Hive server itself didn't manage the session. So for example, if I run, say, use database and use something else as two-step process and two different calls, it will not know. It will be disconnected. So those kind of things could not be solved. With Hive 2 and stuff, they did solve couple of these things, but at the end of the day, it's still asynchronous. It's not like you run a query, you get a query and stuff like that. It's still MapReduce job that runs on the background. There are a bunch of optimization that needs to be done. So can I draw an hourglass model?
Yeah.
So I like this hourglass model. 3 years back, I used to talk about it. So assuming that actually, hourglass is like this, sorry. It's the other way around.
Here it is.
So let's just focus on a different thing. So this is a smaller one, and then it goes a little smaller. This is where the day-to-day analytics happens, right? Which means I log in, I want to see the health of my business. How is it? Nobody will run a Hive job on that. If they run a Hive job, they'll never come to this, right? They will never look at this page. You need something really fast. Then from here, you'll always go to the next level, saying that, I saw this, but I'm now curious what happened there. When you say what happened there, you need a next level of details, which is like a bigger data set. So if I say this is 1 terabyte, this will immediately become 50 terabyte, right? And I say, you know what, I figured out, now I want to do more analysis. For example, if I'm seeing some pattern where somewhere, some of the users are behaving differently, now I want to go to a really user level information, which can be close to 1 petabyte now. So if you see, this movement of accessing an information has to be optimized. So this is where, all the old days RDBMS helped where 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte. People used to take pride in saying that we have an Oracle cluster. Even Yahoo used to take pride in saying we have Oracle rack cluster, 16-node cluster. I was the one, who was managing it. It was, I think, 240 terabyte, something like that, 240 or 280 terabyte, right? And then Amazon took a pride because we reduced to 12, and they said, we reduced all the way up to 8, and they said we are at the 12. So that kind of competition used to have, and now the competition happens on the Hadoop. Who has the biggest cluster and stuff like that. So as you go down 50 terabyte, right? It's still bunch of things on RDBMS will help, but this is where you'll see that some of these systems do not really perform as well as. And in this case, not that I am just because Vivek has invited me, I'm talking about Vertica, but we tested Vertica on this, right? Where we loaded concurrent and all these things. It turned out to be fairly well. They have a good architecture where it just allows you to load the data in a very fast and access that data very fast. But as you go down here, obviously Vertica can handle, but licensing will be.
That I'll ensure. Don't worry.
This is where.
Just go for it.
Yeah, this is where the Hadoop, helps you. Now what happens is people want something like this, that I should be able to do high from here to here, right? So some people, depends on what their planning is for a year, 2 year, 3 year, they may not make this 50 terabyte, they'll keep it 4 terabyte, 8 terabyte, they'll continue to use MySQL, but they'll create 10 node, 20 node, 40 node, 80 node, whatever cluster they want, they'll create a cluster and keep the data here, and that's how they'll use the Hive. With Scala QL or Scala and using Spark QL, you can have an RDD structure into the cluster. But the problem with that is if it crashes and stuff, it has to load into the memory again. But if you see on the bottom, this data, as you go, this part will access this thing, this part will access this thing, and this part will access this thing. So the use cases will keep changing, right? There will be a very small number of people who would like to do very little but very deep analytics. They will not run this query every day. They will use this data set, right? The people who are like in the field and quickly want to come up with some quick numbers so that they can optimize, they will go somewhere in between this and this. So that's how this whole movement of the data happens, and that's where Hive has its own place, but not everywhere Hive like.
Yeah, that's very interesting because we also keep on talking about democratization of data. And this is exactly what Rohit just touched upon. In fact, this would have been a question to you, but Rohit, you touched upon. Like there are different, and because earlier, if you see in the way people used to derive value out of the data, it just created EDW, or as he said, create a RDBMS layer, and you can have clusters of that, and then you derive value of that. But who are ultimately the users? Mostly the IT team, who used to give reports to the business folks whenever they asked for it, some pre-canned reports. The report changes, you have to redo the architecture because it is not there in the index. So all those inflexibilities used to be there. Okay, but now it has come to this level that other than the business guys, it is actually on the lower side that Rohit drew, the data scientist who runs deep analysis but not running the query every day, they will also be making use of that huge amount of data. So now the level of the degree of stakeholders or the number of stakeholders within the organization who wants to derive value out of the data, that has increased significantly because of whatever 4 layers of data that Rohit drew. So that's pretty interesting, Rohit. So as Rohit mentioned, they went ahead with the HP Vertica for that second layer, not the first one, but for the second layer. Okay, so what is it that incrementally you are planning to do with this introduction of the second layer, Rohit, vis-a-vis what you have been doing till now?
So second layer, we want to power most of the analytics and give. So we are doing the homegrown tool where we are enabling our users, which are either the business users or even the power users, have them themselves do the analysis rather than have some engineer sit with them. Have them explain what they want, and the guy runs something, then comes back, the data is not good, then he goes back, and this is back and forth, wastage of time. So we are enabling the tool to take an advantage of it. The tool should be intelligent enough to go, which part of the layer that it has to access based on the modeling that we do, right? So this will allow, further democratizing the data itself, make it like have the data available for the people who really need it. And in the fastest possible way that they can use it. Rather than, take a day, the job will run, come back, then they load it in Excel, or they load it in some other DB, and again do the analysis. In the meantime, the whole day is gone. Given that, with the pace that the business is moving and the challenges that they are facing, I think it becomes inevitable to, not attend to those. So obviously that middle layer will grow in at least what I see in a foreseeable future.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. So, so any questions on this front, on this, the layers that is drew? That is really interesting, actually.
I have a question on the layered architecture that you just talked about. I just wanted to know, is there a way where you can do reporting on top of data residing in Hadoop directly, or really you have to introduce MySQL, other RDBMS, or NoSQL
no,
to do the reporting?
You can directly do reporting on Hadoop. That's not a problem. I think there are a bunch of open source tools have come in. Even companies like Hortonworks, Cloudera, they have their own platform to do it. What is more important is doing the right model. And in the right model, you need to make sure who's going to use it, what is going to be the concurrency, because concurrency is something that kills right now Hadoop. I mean, the task concurrency is okay, but concurrency with the responsiveness is where it gets killed, right? For example, if I go with, I don't know how many of you use Impala, Cloudera Impala, right? Concurrency is not as good, right? Similarly, if you go with this Spark QL, right? Spark. So when you set up a Spark master, everything connects to the master. And then if you have too big a query, it sometimes crashes. So those things, business users won't like it. As a techie, you can be okay, oh, let me start that agent again, or let me start that process again, run that query and do something. But business user doesn't care. I have heard people saying that your system is down. And it's just that he probably didn't log in properly, or he didn't run the right query or something like that. But he says your system is down. So business has least amount of patience because there's not cup of tea, right? They just want something and you should just give it to them.
So you're saying it can be done, but there is a concurrency issue. So there are other issues.
Other issues, exactly. You need to model it.
You need different layers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the other question is, so do you still, based on your experience and expertise, do you still say that Hadoop is mostly the pre-processing stuff that needs to be done in Hadoop and will not use for any other purpose?
I wouldn't say that. I would say that if
just
you have a large data.
granular data in Hadoop and then build layers on top of it.
Yeah. So for any high responsiveness, business critical data that has to be available to the user, probably I'll not have that as Hadoop as an interface that people immediately respond to it. But for a large, say somebody wants to do 6 months analysis, you don't want to kill your RDBMS for it, right? Be it MySQL, Vertica, Oracle, what? Because that guy is doing a 6 months analysis. That means he's not going to take any decision now. If he's not going to take any decision now, it's okay for him to come back a day later or 6 hours later or 2 hours later, depends on how big your cluster is. So make sure based on how big and what kind of data you're going to allow the user to access, based on that pattern itself, you can choose where the guy query request has to go. So, hope I answered your question. You had a question.
So, basically, we talk about the usage and all, right? So, one part is the visualizations and the other part is the statistics that goes behind it, right? So, yeah, so one part is the statistics and another part is the visualization that goes on it, like let's say a D3 or something like that, right? And statistics, let's say a SAS on R or a Python or something like that. So how easy, and I believe that it's on, you put it on top of, let's say, a Vertica or something, right? So how easy was it to integrate these tools, like let's say an R or let's say a D3 or something on top of Vertica for you guys?
I think that Vertica he'll answer. I was talking to him and he said that distributed R is available on Vertica.
Yeah. So so there is R and there is distributed R. So R is something which is there within Vertica. So you can run models. You can make the libraries of R and make it native libraries to Vertica. Okay. So the R resides within Vertica, but R traditionally has got this issue of performance because it is single stream. So what we have created, it's a HP Labs creation, and HP Labs, it has come out with so many IPs over the years, right? So we have created something which is called distributed R, similar to the Revolution R, but we have got our own version of distributed R. It has got a very, very tight integration with the Vertica. You can create models in distributed R, and you can run those models within Vertica. Okay, so that improves your scoring and all that. That gives extremely fast performance. And distributed R, the way it is, we are seeing lots and lots of people adopting R or distributed R. Primary reason is what is the choice you have. The choice you have is SAS. And SAS is a damn expensive animal. You get it and you have to pay 30% year on year. Okay, so the one of the biggest private sector banks in India, who have moved their complete EDW platform and now calling it as a big data platform onto HP solution, which is based on HP Vertica. Okay, and they're also moving most of their queries on R. Okay, not on SAS. SAS they've already invested, they want to just retain that investment, but no further investment on SAS. and it will be R with combination of Vertica or distributed R with combination of with Vertica that they will be using. Bank of America, for example, they have moved a big way onto R. So the R plus Vertica, that is what gives that whole story of extremely fast predictive analysis on a extremely fast RDBMS like Vertica. Yeah, sure. But ask Rohit the question. Yeah.
No, it's okay.
No, it's a question to me. Okay.
So often in enterprise, the problems we face is like, when we try to download any kind of packages and all these things, so that kind of creates an issue because of security.
The mic is not on. Looks like.
Hello. Audible?
Yeah.
Okay, so often in the enterprise, what we face is when we try to download any package or do some stuff, and also that's kind of blocked by the firewall or the security or something like that. So when you talk about the heaven, the E part, does that kind of take care of this thing in the distributed R? I mean, or do you have predefined packages that can help us out, or something like that?
Sorry, I couldn't get the question.
R packages. I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
R packages. So yeah.
So in enterprises, the problem is we can't really get the packages because of security reasons or firewalls and all these things.
Yeah.
So distributed, and that's a primary reason why we normally use SAS rather than R and all. But when it comes to distributed R, so is it like kind of a subscription thing where we can get those packages, or the E part of the heaven takes care of it, where you can allow these packages to get in?
Yeah. So you're right. So there might be some security policies which might be restricting you in terms of downloading these packages. So distributed R also is a freely available software. You can download it. Where what you have to pay additionally is just the support charge. The way our RHEL or SUSE Linux, that is the model that is. License is absolutely free. Now the question is whether your security policy will still allow those packages to download. I don't think I have an answer for that actually. Yeah. Any other question? So it's a good, Rohit. So whatever you have done, so now going forward, because when I had met you, one of the things that you had told me was that you want to make data a big enabler for your business going forward. Data is going to play bigger and bigger role for your business. So what is your vision? How do you see yourself in the next 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, sort of?
So yeah, I'm a big on the analytics part, and especially predictive way rather than. So most of the time, if you see, people want reports, and the only reason they want reports is to be able to find the difference in what they expect and what is there, right? And that is where they say analytics, right? Which actually is not required. On the back end, we can easily do it. Why? And human brain analyzes only so much amount of data. Now imagine suddenly you have like 10 terabyte coming on your face. Neither Excel, none of this system will handle it, right? Why not bring, instead of making it more like a reporting data dump? I think I started calling this, reports are more like a data dump, because we as a tech haven't done a good job in pockets to bring out the data in a much more cleaner way. So the way I'm actually targeting in InMobi is, the first page you log in should be notification and alerts, which means that one line should be so powerful that information is already been interpreted by the system, rather than, you look at this report, oh, the 10th row seems 10% change. Then people say, oh, I can sort it by the 10% change, but now I need four parameter put together, and in that 4 parameter put together, I want to see a different score, right? Rather than let system do it, you just surface the thing, and that's what I want, to push this, that the first page should be the dashboard of alerts and notification, which matters to you. It should understand you as to what your day looked like yesterday or is going to look like today. And that's where the predictive parts come in, right? For example, if, and I'll talk more of an ad industry, you have a $1,000 campaign, or you have a $10,000 campaign, or $100,000 campaign, right? How do you make sure that $100,000 doesn't take the priority over $1,000? Because if the $1,000 doesn't take a priority, it will not come again, because it's not getting the reach, right? You need to make sure that you can predict how to burn, how much to burn, when to burn, on whom to burn, right? And make sure the ROI, if it's an advertiser, gets its ROI, right? If the advertiser is looking towards the app downloads, that he wants to reach out to the maximum number of users, again, they say user is not just user, it's like quality users. Now the moment you add this word like quality, how do you qualify quality? you need a scoring engine suddenly. Right? When you need a scoring engine, it has to be parameterized. Now imagine, if I have to take just one mobile device, it has a 3G connection, Wi-Fi connection, while talking 3G works, it shows 3G but doesn't even work as 2G, right? You might be coming from an OS which is modded, then you are using an app, suddenly the network was not working, it will resend the same packet twice. You want to make sure that on the back end it's not twice, right? So all these things, just imagine the quality that I have to define as a user coming from that device can make it very complex. And to make sure that you capture it and model it in a way where it becomes a value to the business, business should just think about, I'll get $100,000. If you burn it in a way that my customer wants it, that's all I want to hear. And don't get off. How many of you actually worked with sales guys? Do they understand anything else other than numbers?
That's not fair, right?
So that's why I said don't get offended. But actually that is the right thing, because getting dollars itself is a very big task, right? But once the dollars is in, it's all in the hands of tech guys to make sure it gets the ROI that the sales guy is looking for, right? And that's where the predictive part and analytics part comes in. That you should plan, process, keep it ready. And it should be so handy that the person doesn't have to scramble around just to get that number. That one small number that he thinks, how much did I really get out of this?
Seriously. Any questions? Because I think we'll be hitting the time clock pretty soon. Yeah.
Sure.
Enterprise, and we have a challenge in terms of response time or the execution time of the reports. So do you think any of the Hadoop ecosystem or a big data part of it will help to improve the performance or the response time? Any of this?
Why don't you answer that?
It's very almost close to no information, so I can't really say that anything can be made faster and slower. You give me Hadoop, I'll make Hadoop slower, just by having a skewed data join. So it's very difficult to answer, but yeah, anything can be made faster also. It just needs to understand the use cases, the tool and technology you have, the use case that is trying to serve. Maybe the use case that you have and the tool or technology that you have is not in sync with that. But yeah, Hadoop is not fast, Hadoop is not slow. So it just depends how you use it. In 2008 and 2009, when Pig was coming up, we did a test, and me and one of intern that I worked with, they wrote a paper where Pig, that's where Pig, how many of you use Pig scripting? Pig. Replicated join and skewed join, right? That paper was written by me and intern. That's when Yahoo introduced skewed join and replicated join. And I still have it in my laptop that I carry. I didn't file the patent, but the point is, it has its own positives and negatives, right? Because if it's doing a map side join, the data has to be small that you're joining. If it's a reduced side join, then if you have too large a data and too skewed, and skewness means out of say 100 records, 90% of records belong to that key. Whether 90 records belong to that one key. Obviously, that one reducer will run for 20 hours and the rest of them will finish in 10 minutes, right? So anything can be made fast and slow, depends on where you hit it. Sorry, I couldn't answer in a very specific, but
I think it depends on the architecture.
yeah, that's what. It depends on what use cases you're trying to solve.
So Rohit, one question, there is a lot of hype around this data lake concept. Do you use that kind of, because you came from DBA background, do you really use that thing in your kind of organization, or is it still a hype?
It's not a hype. At the end, data is becoming, I would say data now has become a currency for every company. Without data, you can't really. So if you see, you go to a retail store, the person knows you. We are in digital world. I know you only through your device or some ID that I have in my backend, right? So obviously data is very important. Data lake just enables you to have a larger, spread of the data.
But the data lake is more about raw data, which doesn't have any structure in place, and it is expected that your analytical tool makes sense out of data, and your data scientist will help you to make sense out of it.
How many have you really used it? I give raw logs. If people can really make out sense of it, I will write off the 10,000 rupees check immediately. The thing is, schema-less. That itself means there is no structure. If there is no structure, at least human who are not, people who are data savvy, who understands what they need out of it, they will be able to make sense of it. But people who really don't understand the schema, right? These are all JSON logs these days, or some custom record format that people have come up because in their company they want to use it, right? It could be an Apache log or anything. Now, if you just dump it, you at the max you can index it. You cannot say, oh, I'll just dump it, you don't need anything, and on the top you do anything. Yeah, that's a good marketing statement, but from a usability perspective, I don't think so. It doesn't make sense.
Also on this data lake, we had an experience with this bank which moved on to HP Big Data platform. So this is what I had mentioned even in my other session. So when they went into this the big data thing, and they said, I want to be prepared for the next at least 5 years. Okay, and as he said, he wants the business guys has to actually play with that data rather than going to the IT team and come back and all that. Now the business guys, based on how the business has evolved, scenarios have changed and all that, they might be asking different types of questions. Now that data may be there in the analytics platform, the second layer, or it may not be there in that layer. So what happens? You go to the source systems to extract that data. Now in a typical enterprise, and especially a big enterprise like a bank, each of the source systems, they have got their own fiefdoms. No one allows them to touch because it directly impacts the business. Okay, no one allows that. So much so that the head general manager who was driving this is the number 3 in the organization after MD, ED, and this guy. He said that if I have to go to that source system, which was core banking based on Infosys core banking system, I'll have to go and talk to someone like Narayan Murthy. Okay, that is the kind of inflexibility that is built into that. Okay, so what is the solution? The solution is that when you are designing this whole platform, you try to get as much data as possible into the data lake, which essentially means that you are prepared for today, but you are also prepared for tomorrow. Because you don't know what kind of questions you will be asking tomorrow. You don't need to go to the source systems to ask for some additional data. That gives you a flexibility that, okay, fine, that data is there. If I have to make some changes in the analytics platform, that is the second layer that he's talking about, I can do that revised ETL and get that data. So that is the business advantage of having that data lake.
Yeah.
But again, the same point what you mentioned about, like in big banks like that, there will be LOBs and they own the data, they won't share the data. So will they allow us to dump the data in the data lake?
Yeah, absolutely. So it has to be top-down approach. Okay, it can't be approach that one guy who has a fascination for data lake has to drive that. This initiative was driven right from the MD's level to who had to make a presentation to the board that we are going ahead with HP Big Data platform. This is the investment and this is the expected ROIs. So it has to be totally top down so that every stakeholder gives that support.
It has to be planned well.
It has to be planned well.
If there was a silver bullet, I think people would be just using it. I don't see why people won't be using it.
Yeah.
There's a silver bullet.
Yeah. I mean, these kind of projects are never only isolated IT projects. Yeah.
Do you see these data lake kind of projects like the data warehouse kind of enterprise data warehouse project level? It's like a
Most of the places we are seeing that architecture, whether it is Facebook, whether it is this bank, whether it is the other 2 e-commerce companies that in India, of course, he named 4, right? Out of these 3 are on Vertica. So most of them have got this concept of a data lake where you get the raw data and you have got this analytics platform. But as he said, I'll give you the raw data, try to make some sense out of it. It will be very difficult.
Very tough. Right? But yeah.
And he's serious because in InMobi there is a concept called hackathon, which is held once a year. You can go and they will give you a problem or you come out with a problem and try to solve it within a day.
So yeah, so data lake is good. Making value out of it is, I think most of the companies are struggling. But what they're saying is, since certain things have become cheaper, let's not throw away the data. Who knows what I can get out of it?
Yeah.
And most of the startups, they have actually come out because they looked at the data in their own previous company and they made sense out of it. And once you make sense out of it, there's a new business opportunity. And I think most of the companies have become so smart enough that they have figured out how to do good business. But now breaking that next level, going beyond that level that they have defined, It's the data that is telling them. And that's why if you see data scientist job has become probably the most sexiest job that you can have.
Yep.
Because only he understands, and whatever he says, you have to just agree to it, right?
So we are almost hitting the clock. So if we can have one more question, well and good, else we can. Yes. Yeah.
So I'll tell my experience, nothing against Oracle. So people who are working on Oracle, don't take it wrong. But this is my testing, and I did. We loaded close to like, I think 300, 400 GB worth of data on Vertica versus Oracle, a similar cluster. And Vertica was way faster in load and even in the query. I think we have shared the graphs also, right? With you.
Yeah.
So obviously, there are things that can be done on Oracle and there are things that can be done on Vertica. But I found, I am a big Oracle guy. Like till last year I was Oracle guy. I mean, along with Hadoop.
Till you gave me the contract, I thought that you were an Oracle guy. Okay, good.
Sure.
So you came from the database background. So where do you see these new SQLs and NoSQLs kind of threaten to our traditional RDBMS?
So NoSQL is nothing but index lookup based query layer. So if you take HBase, Redis, or you take Cassandra, any of these things, they have primary key, which I'm using the language of RDBMS, but otherwise in NoSQL world it's called key, right? Row key. They created a layer so that you can actually do, because most of the people, most of the community is not engineering. Right? Non-engineering community is much bigger. If you don't give any easy tools to access it, that particular technology will die, and every technology has its own plus points. For example, if I'm getting an event, I want to update an event, I will not use regular RDBMS. I'll use HBase, Cassandra, Redis, right? MongoDB, CouchDB, one of these things which will allow them to update it, right? But the moment I don't use a row key, I do a scan. Imagine it's a 10 terabyte cluster or 20 terabyte or 100 terabyte cluster. It doesn't even know where to look up. So it will go and scan all the, obviously it will die. Right? So NoSQL has its place. You need to really know, again, like I said, use case. Based on this use case, you actually make sure that is for that, right? If it's always going to be lookup, obviously if you want lookup with say 10 milliseconds or 50 milliseconds or 5 milliseconds, obviously you will not go to RDBMS because that connection time itself will take some 400 milliseconds, right? So you need something like this. But the moment you're talking about going beyond a row key in a large way, I think you don't have to think NoSQL. But the world is neither left like NoSQL or right like pure star model, because given that now logs are there, I need a quick update. Everything is required now quick. Quick update, quick access, quick delete, quick load, everything has to be quick. People say that I hear the event happen and I should be able to see the event now. Maybe there are like 20 systems on the back end, but they want to see now, right? So when you have a requirement like this, that's when you need a combination of things. You need NoSQL based, you need SQL based, you need file system based. People use a lot of file systems. I have seen people using Berkeley DB also, right?
Any further question? No, nothing. So with this, we should wrap this up. Thanks, Rohit.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you,
extremely, in fact, I learned more in the last 1 hour than what I have learned in the last 6 or 7 months of knowing Rohit. I mean, it was really awesome. Thanks
Thank
a
you,
lot,
guys.
Rohit.